This all happened about a year ago. I was 32 and working night shifts as a janitor in an old city hospital. I had been going through a rough time after a breakup, and bills were piling up. The place was mostly empty. The paint was peeling, and the fluorescent lights flickered above me. I was just trying to keep it together. I spent most of my nights cleaning patient wards in silence. The quiet felt heavy. Sometimes I could hear my heartbeat too clearly. I don't know why, but I kept thinking about how strange it was to be alone there. I still think about it, even now. One night, around midnight, I was pushing my cart down a dimly lit hallway. The air was cold, even for winter. Then I heard it, a clucking sound coming from the basement. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks. I figured it was a rat or something. I tried to ignore it. I focused on my work, wiping down chrome railings and bedside tables, but the clucking kept going. I felt a chill creeping up my spine. As the nights passed, the clucking grew louder. It echoed in the emptiness. My heart raced a little faster each time I heard it. I thought about going down to check, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I felt watched, like something was just behind me. I started to see shadows moving in my peripheral vision. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I was just tired. One night, while cleaning a patient room, the clucking returned, and it was louder. My hands shook as I gripped the mop. I had to see what it was. I walked to the basement door. It creaked open as I pushed it, revealing dark stairs. My heart pounded in my chest. The air felt colder down there. Taking a step into the darkness, the clucking grew more frantic. I turned on my flashlight, but the light barely reached the first steps. As I went down, the floorboards felt unsteady beneath me. Shadows danced, and I saw something. A glimpse of a rooster. Its beady eyes seemed to stare right at me. Then it vanished. I stumbled back, my heart racing. What did I just see? I turned to leave, desperate to get away from that basement. Suddenly, I heard a whisper. It was a chilling voice that made my skin crawl. "Why are you here?" It echoed around me. I looked around. No one was there. Fear locked my legs in place, and my breath came quick and shallow. I wanted to run, but I felt paralyzed. I just stood there in that dark basement, the clucking now replaced by silence. I knew then I was not alone in that hospital. I finally turned and raced up the stairs, my mind spinning with confusion and dread. I never went back to that basement again. The clucking sounds faded, but the memory never did. Every night I worked there, I felt the weight of what I had seen. And every time I heard silence, I remembered that whisper. "Why are you here?" I'd never find the answer. The next night, I returned to the hospital. I didn't want to, but I needed the paycheck. I tried to shake off the memory of the basement as I cleaned the wards. My routine was comforting, familiar, but the weight of that whisper lingered in my mind. I kept glancing at the basement door. It was always there, like a dark secret taunting me. I worked extra fast to avoid thinking about it. My mop slid over the floors, and the lights flickered above, creating dizzying shadows. Each time the air shifted, I felt a tremor of unease. Around 2 in the morning, I heard it again, the clucking. High-pitched and frantic, it echoed through the corridor. I froze. It was different this time, almost urgent. I knew I should ignore it, but I was curious. I felt drawn to it, like a moth to flame. My heart raced as I approached the basement door again. I hesitated, running my hand over the cold metal handle. The voices in my head told me to go back, to do my job and forget about it. But the clucking persisted. It felt like a call, a pull I couldn't resist. I opened the door, and darkness swallowed me once more. I flicked on my flashlight, casting a beam of light down the stairs. I took a deep breath and stepped on the first stair. It creaked beneath me, but I didn't turn back. As I descended, the air thickened. This time, I heard a rustling sound mixed with the clucking. I reached the bottom, scanning the room. My breath caught. There were feathers everywhere, plucked and scattered on the ground. Fear gripped me tighter. What happened here? I whispered to myself. Then I heard it again, a low growl among the clucking. My stomach dropped. I turned, shining my flashlight in all directions, but the light failed to pierce the oppressive darkness. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. No reply came. Yet the clucking grew nearer, frantic and insistent. I slowly backed away, feeling the crunch of feathers beneath my feet. That's when I saw it, a shimmer of movement at the edge of the dim light. My heart raced as something large shifted in the shadows. Panic surged through me. I stumbled backward, nearly losing my balance. "Who's there?" I shouted, but nothing responded. The growl intensified, a primal sound vibrating through the air. I could feel the heat of something unseen. Without thinking, I turned and ran back up the stairs, 2 at a time. Each step echoed in the empty hallway. I slammed the basement door shut and leaned against it, gasping for air. My heart felt like it would burst. But then, I heard something that froze me in place. The growl transformed into a laugh. It was chilling and cruel, shaking me to my very core. "Why are you here?" I could barely whisper in response. The laughter faded, but I knew that whatever haunted that basement was still present, watching me. I had crossed a line, stirred a darkness, and now I was in its sights. I left that hospital that night feeling more afraid than before, knowing I had just uncovered something much worse than I ever imagined. As I stepped outside into the cold night air, I thought about what would happen next. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had opened a door that would never be closed again. The days that followed were a blur of anxiety and dread. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept drifting back to the basement. I felt like I was haunted by whatever lurked down there. Every creak of the old building echoed in my mind like a warning. That night I returned to the hospital, my body heavy with weariness. I moved through the halls with a practiced routine, but nothing felt normal. I avoided the basement door, but it was hard. The whispers of clucking still rang in my ears, and the low growl haunted my thoughts. As the clock struck 2 again, I found myself wringing my hands. This time, though, it was different. Instead of just clucking, I heard something else, a rhythmic thumping noise. It wasn't frantic, it was steady, almost purposeful. My curiosity got the better of me, stronger than my fear. I approached the basement door again. The handle felt cold and unyielding. Taking a deep breath, I gripped it and twisted. The door creaked open, revealing the familiar darkness. I shined my flashlight, and the beam swept across the feathers scattered across the floor. I took a step down the stairs, feeling an irrational urge to see what was happening. The thumping grew louder, and with each step I felt my heart beat faster. I reached the bottom and took in the sight. The space was dim and chaotic, but what shocked me was what I saw at the far end, a large shadow that seemed to pulse with energy. My flashlight flickered, and when it shone brightly again, I realized it wasn't just a shadow. It was a massive silhouette of something that resembled a rooster, but much larger than any I'd ever seen. It stood there, motionless, feathers bristling in the dim light. With a mix of fear and fascination, I took a step closer. The thumping noise continued, sounding like a heartbeat. I was drawn to it. "What are you?" I breathed, not expecting an answer. Suddenly, the creature turned its head toward me. Its beady eyes reflected the light, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Then, without warning, it let out a monstrous crow, shattering the silence. The sound was not just loud, it was menacing, echoing off the walls. I stumbled backward, bumping into something. My light caught a glint of something sharp on the ground. Bones, white and brittle among the feathers. Panic clawed at my throat. I turned to run, but the creature charged at me, flapping its enormous wings with a ferocity I couldn't comprehend. In a moment of sheer terror, I dashed up the stairs, feeling the rush of air behind me. I reached the door, slamming it shut and locking it tight. I leaned against it, breathless and trembling. Then I heard it again, the growl, now closer and more distinct. "You shouldn't have come back," it seemed to say, its voice slithering through the cracks. That sinister laugh echoed in my mind once more. I staggered back from the door, my hands shaking. I realized then that I hadn't just opened a door. I had stepped into something far worse than I imagined. Whatever haunted the basement wasn't going to let me leave easily. And as I stood alone in the dark hallway, I feared that I was about to find out just how deep the darkness really went. I dashed down the hallway, desperate to put distance between me and whatever that creature was. The growl echoed in my ears, a reminder of how close danger lurked. I zigzagged through the dimly lit corridors, my breath coming in quick, jagged gasps. Every shadow felt alive, and I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching me. I reached the nurses' station, hoping to find safety in numbers, but the place was hollow and empty, save for the sterile buzzing of lights above. I glanced around, half expecting my colleagues to peek out from behind the desk or around the corner, but there was no one. I felt the weight of isolation like a heavy curtain falling around me. "Anyone here?" I called out, my voice quivering. Silence was my only answer. I raked my fingers through my hair, pacing as panic clutched at my heart. I couldn't go back to that basement. I wouldn't. Suddenly, a door swung open, and I spun around. A doctor emerged, his face pale and drawn. He looked just as rattled as I felt. "Think you're the only one hearing the noises?" he said, voice low but urgent. "You heard the thumping, didn't you?" I nodded, feeling relief mixed with dread. "What do you know about it?" He rubbed the back of his neck, glancing over his shoulder. "There's been talk, strange things happening at night, people disappearing. We thought it was just paranoia, but those sounds, they started a week ago." "Disappearing?" My heart dropped. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to an urgent whisper. "Some say it's a creature. They described it as a giant bird. Others said it's worse, a guardian or a curse." A chill ran through me at the word curse. I felt the hairs on my neck stand on end. "But why? What does it want?" "I don't know," he admitted, his eyes darting around as if he feared being overheard. "But you shouldn't be alone. We need to stick together." As he spoke, the distant thumping resonated again, the sound echoing from the level below. The doctor froze, his face turning even paler. "That's it," he whispered. "It's getting louder." The growl returned, piercing through the atmosphere like a knife. My skin crawled. "We can't stay here," I yelled. He nodded and made for the emergency exit. I followed, my feet pounding against the floor. Just as we reached the exit door, a loud crash came from down the hallway. We stopped dead in our tracks. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice thick with fear. He nodded slowly, tension crackling in the air. "We need to go back, now." As we turned to retreat, the lights flickered above us, plunging the hallway into darkness. I felt the icy grip of panic return. That's when I saw it, the shape of a massive figure outlined against a faint glow at the end of the hallway. It was not just a shadow, it was standing at the door to the basement, feathers glinting like shards of glass. My throat went dry. "What do we do now?" I could barely manage the words. Before he could answer, the creature let out a horrifying call, shaking the very foundation of the hospital. We were trapped. The creature stepped closer, its massive wings unfurling with a rustle that sent a shiver down my spine. I felt like I was frozen in place, my instincts screaming at me to run, but my body refused to move. The doctor beside me seemed equally paralyzed, his eyes wide and terrified. Then, without warning, it lunged forward, and I finally found my legs. I sprinted toward the emergency exit, dragging the doctor along. I slammed my hand against the door, praying it would open, but it was locked tight. Panic clawed at my throat as I tugged at the handle. "Over here!" the doctor shouted, pointing to a window at the far end of the nurses' station. I glanced back, just in time to see the creature swoop down, its talons poised to strike. My heart raced. We had seconds. We darted across the empty station, dodging flickering lights that cast eerie shadows. I could feel the heat from the beast's breath hitting my neck. We reached the window, and I quickly tried to pry it open, but the latch was old and rusty. The doctor joined me, frantically working on the stubborn mechanism. The growl shook the walls. I turned, glimpsing the creature now wedged between the ceiling and floor, its beady eyes locked onto us. It was surprisingly agile for such a massive form. "Hurry!" I shouted, desperation fueling my strength. Finally, with a loud clunk, the window released. I pushed it up with all my might. "You go first," I urged the doctor. He hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the looming figure. Then he nodded, scrambling to the open window. As he climbed through, I felt the air shift behind me. The creature was advancing. I slid past the doctor, feeling the feathers brush my arm as I lunged outside. We tumbled onto the ground, rolling to disperse the momentum. I quickly scrambled to my feet, looking around for any sign of safety. The hospital loomed ominously, its windows like empty eyes watching us. The doctor stood beside me, breathless and panting. "What just happened?" he gasped, trying to catch his breath. "What was that thing?" "I don't know," I said, staring back at the building. "But we can't stay here. We have to get everyone out." As we turned to run, a flash of movement caught my eye. From the shadows near the hospital's entrance, something small and dark darted away. My stomach dropped. "There are others," I murmured, the realization hitting me like a punch. "What do you mean?" he asked, confusion etched on his face. I think whatever that thing is, it's not just terrorizing us, it might be hunting." A chill enveloped me as I scanned the area. The night felt alive, and I wasn't sure if we were safe yet. The growls echoed again, more distant this time, but still resonating through the night's silence. We had to warn others, and quickly. But before we could take a step forward, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air, echoing from the hospital. "What was that?" he gasped, his face draining of color. "I don't know, but we need to move," I shouted, as fear tore through me. Every instinct told me to run, but I feared what lay ahead. I had to know. We sprinted away from the hospital, our hearts pounding in tandem. I had no idea what horrors awaited us inside, but the chilling scream lingered in my ears, feeding my dread. I glanced back to see the dark shape stalking the building's perimeter, its wings folding in to adapt. "Where do we go?" the doctor asked, panic flooding his voice. "Follow me," I yelled, turning into the alley behind the hospital. I could feel the adrenaline surging through my veins, pushing me forward. A thin layer of mist clung to the ground, swirling around our feet like lost souls. The air felt alive with tension, crackling with something I couldn't quite pinpoint. "Are there any other exits?" he called after me, his breath heavy and labored. "There's a maintenance shed not far from here. If we can get there, we might find something that can help us," I replied, but doubt gnawed at my mind. I wasn't even sure what could help against a creature like that. We turned a corner, and the alley opened up into a small, dimly lit parking lot. A few abandoned cars sat like ghostly remnants of lives once lived, paint chipped and rusting. I darted toward the nearest one, squinting through the smudged windows. Nothing seemed out of place. "Do you see anyone?" the doctor murmured, still looking back toward the hospital. "I don't," I said, biting my lip. "But we need to keep moving." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart before glancing at the shadows. What if we're too late? What if those screams— Before I could finish, we heard a metallic clang echoing in the distance. A flicker of movement caught my eye. I turned sharply, and my stomach sank. A figure emerged from behind one of the cars, a scruffy man, wild-eyed and clutching a large wrench. "Help! Help me!" he shouted, desperately searching the area. He looked more frightened than anyone I'd seen before. "Who are you?" I called out, instinctively taking a step back. "Vince," he snapped, his voice cracking. "You don't know what's in there." I glanced at the doctor, whose expression mirrored my concern. "What do you mean?" I pressed, hoping for answers. "That thing is hunting people," Vince said, his voice rising in intensity. "It took my buddy right in front of me. I barely made it out." "Okay, so we're not safe yet. We need to get away from here," I said urgently, looking back toward the hospital. The growling seemed to grow louder. Vince shook his head, wild and frantic. "If it can smell blood from that far away, we're all dead." "Then let's get to the shed. It might be our best shot," I shouted, glancing nervously between the hospital and the direction of the maintenance shed not far from here. "Right," he replied, his eyes wide with fear. As we turned to flee, a flash of winged shadow dropped from the night sky. Something blocked our path. The familiar rustle of feathers echoed around us, and suddenly the creature was there, monstrous and ready to strike. I froze. "Run!" I screamed. "Run!" Then everything went dark. I gasped as I stumbled forward, the world swirling into nothingness around me. My heart thudded loudly in my ears, drowning out the growls and chaos. I felt the cold, damp earth under my hands, grounding me as I fought to breathe, to remember. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my thigh. I recoiled instinctively, pushing myself up to see what had happened. My eyes strained in the darkness, but I could only make out vague shapes and shadows. The hospital's outline loomed far off, eerily still. I had no idea how long I'd been out. "Vince! Doctor!" I croaked out, my throat tight. Panic swelled in my chest as silence answered back. I called for them again, feeling utterly lost. Had they been caught? Had something worse happened? As I stood, my flesh seemed to tingle, almost like it was aware of some unseen presence. I took a tentative step forward, my foot hitting a loose piece of debris that clattered to the ground. I cringed at the noise, shushing myself. The tension in the air left me on edge, as if something was waiting, hidden away in the shadows. "Hello?" A whisper escaped my lips, but it felt hopeless. I could barely see a few feet ahead of me, and the darkness stretched endlessly. My hand brushed against something warm and metallic. It was the wrench Vince had held. Then I heard it, a low growl rising from the distance. My pulse raced. I had to move. I could see a faint light flickering near the shed. It wasn't far, and I knew I couldn't hesitate any longer. I limped toward it, adrenaline coursing through me. Each step felt heavy, making me hyper-aware of every creak and rustle. The growl came again, closer this time, wrapping around me like a noose. I kept my eyes fixed on the light, praying I was imagining things. Just as I reached the door, I glanced back. My stomach dropped. A form surged towards me, muscles coiling, wings spread wide against the night sky. It was massive, eyes glowing, piercing through the dark. I felt frozen in place, my body fighting against some primal instinct to flee. I didn't have time. I threw myself inside the shed, slamming the door behind me. I barely managed to latch it when I heard it collide against the wood, sending splinters flying. My heart raced as I turned to find what the shed held. To my surprise, it was cluttered with old medical supplies, boxes of bandages, rusted tools, and even a boost of adrenaline tucked in a small cooler. I grabbed the nearest flashlight, fumbling with the switch while trying to ignore the monstrosity pressing against the door. It pinned me in, rumbling low, as if testing its strength against the wood. Just then, I heard a commotion outside, shouts and a loud crash. My breath caught as I realized the doctor was there, fighting against the creature. I couldn't let fear paralyze me. If I could find a way to help him, we might stand a chance. "Doctor!" I shouted, smashing the flashlight into action. The beam cut through the dusty air, illuminating the cluttered space. "I'm here! I found supplies!" But the answer was silence, replaced by the creature's monstrous growl and the sound of shattering wood. Then everything went dark again. The darkness felt suffocating. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but I stood frozen, flashlight clutched tightly in my hand. I willed the beam to penetrate the shadows, searching desperately for anything I could use. I remembered the adrenaline in the cooler. Maybe it could help the doctor, or even me. With trembling hands, I dashed to the small container, wrenching it open. Inside, the vials glinted like tiny beacons. I grabbed one and shoved it into my pocket, desperate to stay calm. I paced the shed, feeling the creature outside testing its power, scraping its claws against the wood. If I was going to help, I needed to find something more. As the growls intensified, something caught my eye. A long metal rod, half buried under a pile of boxes. It was rusted, but still sturdy. I yanked it free, holding it close like a lifeline. My heart raced. As I pondered my next move, "Doctor!" I yelled again. No response, but the creature's continued assault. I heard the crash of wood splintering, and I knew I had to be quick. I couldn't leave him behind. I approached the door, steadying my breath. Just as I pressed my ear against it, I heard a rush of movement outside. "What are you doing?" I whispered to myself, feeling the terror wash over me. I needed to see. I aimed the flashlight at the door's cracks. Suddenly, I spotted a shadow darting away. My heart raced. Not the creature, but someone else. "Vince!" I shouted. I felt a flicker of hope, but also dread. What if he had been hurt too? With a sudden surge of courage, I pushed the door open just a crack. A rush of icy air hit me, and I peered outside. The faint glow of a flashlight danced in the distance. My breath hitched when I saw the doctor, barely standing, grappling with the beast. I couldn't hold back any longer. I bolted out of the shed, brandishing the metal rod. "Get away from him!" I screamed, charging toward them. The creature turned, hissed, and fixed its glowing eyes on me. I felt like a tiny candle facing a roaring fire, ready to be snuffed out. Vince spotted me, relief flooding his expression. "Get back!" But before I could retreat, the beast lunged. Everything happened in a blur. I swung the rod, connecting with its side. It let out a guttural cry, staggering back, giving Vince the chance to push himself away from its grasp. We had to move. "This way!" I shouted, my voice frantic. We sprinted towards the hospital, my legs screaming in protest. The pounding growl of the creature echoed behind us, relentless and furious. "Where's the exit?" Vince panted, glancing back. "I don't know," I responded, panic clawing at my throat. "Just keep running." But then something in front of us shifted. A figure emerged from the shadows, a silhouette I couldn't quite make out. My heart dropped. "Who's there?" I shouted. I had no choice but to turn around and face whatever threat stood behind us. In that moment, two menacing growls filled the air. Another creature was lurking nearby, eyes glimmering in the dark. "Run!" I yelled, but the words felt hollow. We turned, instincts kicking in. The roar of the creature behind us was joined by a new cacophony of sounds. A low, clucking noise echoed through the darkness. My mind struggled to make sense of it all. What is happening? I thought, terror clawing at my chest. Where do we go? Vince shouted, scanning the ground. We were trapped. A solid wall on one side, monsters on the other. I thrust the metal rod in front of me, my heart pounding, ready to fight off whatever was coming. Then, out of the chaos, a flash of white caught my eye. A huge rooster emerged from the shadows, flapping its wings. It strutted forward as if it owned the night. Is that a rooster? I blurted, a mix of confusion and disbelief washing over me. It clucked loudly, drowning out the growls for a brief moment. What the hell? Vince gasped, his expression a mixture of astonishment and fear. Before I could respond, the rooster collided with the creature, its beak pecking at the beast's eyes. The monster recoiled, momentarily distracted. "What is it doing?" I shouted, the sight leaving me both stunned and ready to laugh. Could this ridiculous bird actually help us? But before I could process this bizarre twist, the creature shook its head violently, refocusing its deadly gaze on the rooster. "We need to go," I yelled, grabbing Vince's arm and tugging him toward a narrow alley to our right. If that spectacle could hold the creature's attention for even a moment longer, we might have a chance. As we dashed into the alley, I heard the rooster cluck madly behind us, still pecking away. The abnormal scene folded into the darkness, but the grip of fear remained firm in my gut. "What do we do now?" Vince panted, glancing back where the conflict played out between the beasts and the bizarre avian savior. "There has to be a way out," I said, my voice trembling. "We just need to keep moving." The sound of frantic squawking mixed with furious growls was like a surreal battle remix. I had no idea how long the rooster could keep up this nonsense. We pressed onwards, adrenaline surging. Ahead was a flickering light. "Look," I pointed, "the main entrance." Hope welled up inside me, but the urgency of the moment sharpened my senses. Just as we reached the door, I heard the unmistakable sound of claws scraping against pavement. Both monsters, the beast and the rooster, were right behind us. "Go!" I yelled, throwing the door open and rushing through. The dim light of the hospital lobby enveloped us. But just as I thought we were safe, I turned around and saw what had once been our refuge, the door slamming shut, a heavy thud echoing in the stillness. "Vincent, we can't stop here," I exclaimed. But my words caught in my throat when I realized we weren't alone. Figures moved through the shadows, eyes glittering with unknown intentions. This night was far from over. What had I stumbled into? I could barely catch my breath as I reeled from the shock of our unexpected predicament. The pitch-black hospital lobby felt like a stage set for nightmares, and the menacing figures emerging from the shadows did little to ease my fear. Instinctively, I stepped back, glancing around for a way out, heart pounding wildly in my chest. "Stay close," I shouted, though I felt uncertain if I could protect us from whatever was looming. "What are those things?" Vince whispered, his eyes darting nervously between the shadows and me. "I don't know," I replied, my voice raw with panic. "But we have to keep moving. There's got to be an exit around here somewhere." In the flickering light, I could finally see them. They were distorted shapes, their features half hidden by the darkness, but they moved with a disturbing fluidity. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through my bones as they swayed closer. Suddenly, the growl that I had come to fear echoed from behind me, pulling my attention. The monstrous creature was still nearby. I glanced back, and in that moment my resolve hardened. We couldn't just wait around to see what those figures wanted. I grabbed Vince's arm, pulling him deeper into the shadows. "Follow me." I motioned toward a narrow hallway leading away from the lobby. It felt like the only way to escape the impending doom. With every step, the growls and whispers grew fainter. a haunting reminder of the chaos we had already faced. We made our way through the winding corridors, the sound of our hurried footsteps piercing the tense silence. My flashlight flickered irregularly, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. I turned corners sharply, seeking any sign that would guide us to safety. After what felt like an eternity, we stumbled into a large storage room filled with sterile supplies, medical equipment, and boxes stacked haphazardly against the walls. It felt like a temporary respite, but I knew we couldn't linger. The growls and strange whispers echoed throughout the hospital. "We can't stay here," Vince insisted, glancing nervously at the door behind us. "What if they find us?" "I know," I replied, fighting to keep my composure. "But we can't just rush blindly out there either. We need a plan." I rifled through the boxes, hoping to find anything we could use as a weapon. All I found were expired medications and old surgical tools. A sick twist of panic clenched my stomach as I considered the darkness that still surrounded us. "I've never seen anything like this," Vince muttered, pacing the room. "Is any of this real? Did we really see that Rooster?" His words hung in the air, and a wave of uncertainty washed over me. I felt like I was losing grip on reality. The night had become a blur of noise and shadows. What was chasing us, and why? I drew a deep breath, forcing myself to focus. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're not safe anywhere. We need to find a way out and warn anyone left in this building." Vince nodded hesitantly. "Okay, but we have to be careful." We crept toward a side door that led into the next corridor. I turned the handle slowly, pushing it open. The corridor was dim, lit by flickering overhead lights that buzzed ominously. As we stepped inside, a cold breeze swept through, causing the hairs on my neck to stand on end. Everything felt too quiet as we made our way forward. I could just about hear my heart thumping in my ears. The echo resonating against the walls. "What's that?" Vince suddenly murmured, pointing to a shadow that was moving back at the end of the hallway. I squinted into the darkness, but all I could see was an endless stretch of corridor. "That's not good," I whispered, feeling dread creep in. "We should move." We turned to run the other way, but before we could retrace our steps, a loud crash erupted behind us. The door we had come through exploded open as dark shapes flooded into the corridor. "Run!" I shouted, panic washing over me as we sprinted down the hallway. My lungs burned, but I refused to slow down. I needed to reach an exit before the shadows caught up to us. "We need to find the stairs," Vince gasped as we ran past doors that led to patient rooms. But I knew the nearest exit led downstairs and into the basement where this nightmare had all begun. Part of me felt compelled to go there again, but I couldn't articulate why. "Stay close," I urged him. "Just keep running." As we approached the end of the corridor, a quick glance back revealed the figures pouring into the hallway, their eyes glinting with malice. Fear surged through me, and I pushed harder, focusing solely on the path ahead. The emergency exit sign flickered like a beacon of hope at the far end. "There!" I yelled, urging Vince forward. But as we reached the door, I knew that being outside wouldn't mean we were safe. "Promise me we'll find help and leave," Vince breathed as we reached for the door handle. "I promise," I replied, though doubt hovered in my chest. "Let's see what's out there first." The door swung open, and we stumbled outside into the night air. But the comfort of the outdoors was short-lived. The hospital loomed behind us, a dark, oppressive figure. The eerie stillness betrayed a lurking menace, and I realized that whatever we had unleashed might not be confined within those walls. "Keep moving," I urged, looking back just in time to see a pair of glowing eyes watching us from the doorway, silhouettes shifting behind. The illusion of safety began to unravel as the clucking returned, echoing in the stillness, mixing with growls that resonated throughout the shadowed landscape. As we turned to run, I felt the weight of all that had happened pressing down on me. The darkness wasn't simply a product of the hospital. It had crept into my mind. I still couldn't shake the feeling that whatever we had encountered wasn't merely a creature, but a manifestation of something darker, deeper than just a haunted place. We sprinted down the pavement, adrenaline pumping through our veins, the night alive around us. The road stretched out ahead, but the whispers from the hospital felt like a tether. What had we awakened, and would we ever break free from it? I glanced back one last time. The figure lingered at the doorway, the chilling laughter echoing in the night, and I knew we had only scratched the surface of the terror that awaited beyond the hospital walls. But for now, we were alive, and I clung to that hope, even as questions swirled in my mind. Why had we been chosen for this nightmare, and would we ever truly escape?